It's time. Championship predictions video. You guys know the drill at this point. Nearly every year, I try to do a predictions video at the start of every season to predict what I think the league that Sunderland are in basically is going to look like. And of course, this year, it's the 2024-2025 Sky Bet Championship season. Let me know in the comments below what your predictions are and be respectful about it and just tell me what you think. Am I way off with a lot of these clubs? Do you think that I'm fairly accurate with some of these clubs? But anyway, let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it. So obviously I'll go from 24th and then work my way up to first here. So finishing rock bottom, I have got Oxford. Now, Des Buckingham, to be fair, did superbly at getting Oxford promoted to the Championship last season. Got them into 5th and they ended up beating Peterborough over 2 legs, which is no mean feat with the quality Peterborough have in League 1, and then beating much fancied Bolton in the final, which is absolutely superb. My feeling is like they've got Will Volks and Palisland Fuaheta, I think the names are for the 2 main signings, or a couple of signings they've made. They seem to have made a few decent additions, but I do wonder whether the sort of the step up from League One to the Championship eventually will prove too much for Oxford. It's great to see them in the Championship, and I'm really happy for them, but sorry Oxford fans, I think you'll end up going back down in bottom place to League One. In 23rd and joining them is Plymouth Argyle. Now, a year ago, I tipped Plymouth to stay up in the Championship, and I think a lot of that was down to the fact Stephen Schumacher had built a good core there, and largely they panned out how I thought they would, where actually they had a very good home record, but away from home they were very patchy. Obviously, the big thing is Wayne Rooney being there. Now, obviously, Ryan Hardy, Bali Mumba, Morgan Whittaker and everyone are still there. Michael Cooper's still there. But I do wonder with Wayne Rooney. Now, Rooney did well at Derby, in my opinion, given everything that he had to work against there. Birmingham, no doubt about it, was a disaster. And I do wonder from Plymouth's perspective, this is the best state a club's been in that Rooney's managed since he's got into management. So that could work in Plymouth's favour, but I'm just not convinced and 100% sure with Wayne Rooney. And also I think second season syndrome might play a factor into it. If Whittaker stays and Hardy stays and all their key players stay, then you never know. But unfortunately, I do think Plymouth will go down. And it's a shame because I quite like Plymouth, actually. Now, originally, the team joining the two of them in 22nd, which was a team I didn't really have in here originally, but when I looked at their lack of convincing business, I've gone for Derby County. Now, Paul Warne, obviously, ever since he's gone into this division, he has had a habit of getting relegated with Rotherham. Now, obviously, the difference is Derby should have better resources than Rotherham, but when you look at they've lost Conor Hourihane, who went to Barnsley. I don't know whether he's still good enough now for the Championship, but by the fact he's gone to Barnsley, might suggest he's not. Jerry Yates on loan. Max Bird isn't there now, who's gone back to Bristol City. Paul Warne's got a task on his hands here, and I think Derby are a much bigger club than Rotherham, and the expectations should be greater, but I'm not 100% convinced with Derby's ability, unfortunately, to avoid the drop. But as I keep stressing, with these 3 clubs, and with any of the clubs, the window at the time of recording is still open for another 3 weeks. So that could mean that you've got a really good... You've still got a good chance to get good business done. But so far, I've gone for Oxford bottom, Plymouth 23rd, Derby 22nd. Portsmouth, the last of the promoted clubs, just surviving. Now, at the time of recording, and any Pompey fans watching, correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe Colby Bishop's got heart issues at the minute. So if he has, and if I'm right, hopefully he gets resolved on that front. Joe Massinho did really well. He won League One with style with Portsmouth last year, and has added players like Jordan Williams from Barnsley and Matt Ritchie from Newcastle. And I think this season I actually think Fratton Park will be a very, very intimidating place for a lot of teams. I'm certainly not looking forward to Sunderland going there because we have a dreadful record at Portsmouth. But regardless of the fact, I do think Portsmouth will actually just about stop up. I think I had them originally a little bit higher, but their lack of business, and their fans seem to be a bit concerned about the lack of business, means that they'll probably finish 21st. But I would back them to stay up, which I think Pompey fans would take right now if they were offered it. 20th place, I've gone for Blackburn Rovers. Now, obviously, they just scraped survival by the skin of their teeth last season, winning against Leicester on the final day. Obviously, the 3... Callum McFadzean, who they got from Coventry in January, I believe, has re-signed for another year. Danny Bart has signed. Andrews Weierman has signed. In terms of experience and leadership, you couldn't have asked for much more. Solid signings. John Eustace did well to keep them up last year, and I do think he'll just about scrape it again. I've seen a few people tip Blackburn to go down, but I do think Blackburn... Now, the big thing is Sammy Smodics. If Sammy Smodics leaves, then that could obviously change. Then I could see Blackburn getting relegated. But I actually think at this point Smodics will stay, and I think with Smodics staying, I think Blackburn will be all right. I definitely think there are 3 worse teams than them. Right, 19th. Now, this is a team we have quite a bit to say on. Hull City. Now, I know that to the outside looking in, who isn't aware of what happened at Hull since the end of last season, might go, wait, what? Hull dropping from 7th to 19th? Are you mad? Well, yes, I am. But with Hull in 19th, there is a couple of reasons for that. The first, at the time of recording, it looks like they could be getting Liam Miller, which I wish Sunderland had really made an effort to try and sign, but there you go. Maybe it's an effort we'll keep Clark, hopefully. But anyway, Liam Miller is a solid signing, but that's not the reason that Liam Miller's a good player. That's not the reason I've got for them to finish 19th. On loan, they lost Zavori, who was from Burnley, Fabio Carvalho, Liam Delap, and then they ended up selling Yaden Philogene and Jacob Greaves. Now, for me, yes, they'll have money to spend, and while I think they should be able to spend a fair bit of money if there's not, serious questions need to be asked. But what I would say is, if I'm trying to think the right way to word this, there's a lot of churn over to be made in one window, and they have lost a lot of quality over a single window. As a result, I think there was a stat that said something like they scored 68 goals last season, and if I'm right, they've lost not far off 60 of those goals. So obviously they're going to have to replace all of those goals, and even though they will have a bit more money to spend, this is why you don't want to have too much to do in one window. And I just think with Hull, I don't think they'll go down or anything, because I do think they will sign some good players. But, I mean, they tried to go for Thomas Asante from West Brom, and Coventry snuck in and stole them off him, basically. And I'm just not convinced with Hull's squad now. I think that Hull will not go down, but I don't think they'll be anywhere near where they were last season. Number 18th, Watford. Now, obviously, at the time of recording, there is still a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes at Watford. The likes of Loser, Asprilla, and Coney have apparently, I think, have gone. Wesley Hoyt might still leave. Tom Cleverley is obviously inexperienced as a head coach, but I was actually quite shocked because not the top 20 podcast had them finishing bottom, I think it was. The second tier pod had them finishing 22nd, and Ryan Jukes did a great video about the troubles at Watford at the moment. And actually, things do not look great behind the scenes. Again, I still don't think they'll get relegated. I still think there'll be 3 worse teams than them, but if they're not careful, then relegation wouldn't actually be a total shock. And for a club like Watford to be in League One, it's not really good enough, is it? So hopefully for their fans' sake, whatever crap is going on behind the scenes ends up getting resolved. But things aren't looking too great at Watford at the moment. But at the minute, I've got them to finish 18th, but that could change, fluctuate and be lower. 17th, I have gone for Preston North End. Now, they lost Liam Miller, Ben Woodburn and Alan Brown in this summer window. And I think that they've not had much business done in the window. I know they've signed maybe 1 or 2 players, but in large part, it's the same squad that was last year, but without their captain, without Liam Miller, who's one of their best players. So, and Ryan Lowe, by all accounts, doesn't seem to be fairly well liked at Preston. While Preston, I think he's done well to keep them afloat, I think if they keep losing players and not being able to replace them, then that's also going to be a concern for Ryan Lowe and for Preston. But at the same time, I think he'll do enough to keep them adrift, to keep them afloat. That's if he's there the whole season. And likewise with any of these clubs, if their head coach or managers are there the whole year. But I think Preston will have a bit of a drop-off to 17th. 16th, I've gone for Swansea City. Now, Vipotnik, who's just joined from Bordeaux, is probably the signing that stood out to me the most. But again, probably because we were linked with him. Luke Williams seems to be competent, and he got them playing some decent stuff, I think, towards the end of last season. And by the way, I will stress, from here onwards to about maybe 10th or 11th, it's so interchangeable. Like, if Swansea ended up finishing if they finished 11th or something, I wouldn't be shocked. Luke Williams seems competent enough, but I think, again, it'll be a nice, steady sort of mid-table finish for Swansea. And I think that when it comes to that, I don't know whether Swansea fans would take that, to be honest, but I think there is some good sign. There seems to be some decent signs going on at Swansea, so I would say that they've got a nice steady mid-table finish. Well, sorry, I made a butcher of that. 15th, Stoke City. They couldn't finish 16th last year because we took it off them. But Stoke, Steven Schumacher did the typical cycle where a manager goes in, does well initially, gets the end of the season, keeps Stoke away from trouble, then starts the next season poorly and gets sacked. Now, I'm hoping for his sake, Steven Schumacher avoids that fate, like what the likes of Alex Neil. And maybe to a lesser degree, Michael O'Neill, where he started the 22-23 season really poorly, and then performance-wise, and then lost his job. But Stoke at some point need to get out of the cycle, but I'm hoping for Stoke's sake that they can do it. Victor Johansson and Sam Gallagher are the 2 that I've noticed that they have signed. Johansson is a pretty good keeper, I think, and Gallagher might be a sort of steady-ish pair of hands up front. And it might be that maybe Stoke might want just a boring mid-table season without any threat of going down. But there's no getting away from the fact that Stoke, ever since they've dropped into the Championship in 2018, they've never been in the top half, I don't think. And really, for a club like them, when they were in the Prem for 10 years prior to that, isn't good enough. But at the moment, I've got 15th, but as always, could finish higher, could finish a couple of places lower. In 14th, I have got Millwall. Now, Neil Harris is back, and he ended up doing a really good job steadying the ship towards survival at the end of last season. In the summer, they've added mainly Macaulay Langstaff from Notts County for 750 grand, I think it was, which is a gamble. He's definitely got a record of goal scoring in the lower leagues, but the jump from League 2 to the Championship will be a massive step up, I think. Kevin Nesbitt and Duncan Watmore up front. Tanganga, who was on loan from Tottenham, I think has all but has rejoined permanently. I think that what will mainly keep them in mid-table is their defence, I think, will be very solid, and I think the Den will be actually a pretty tough place for teams to go to. But going forward, they probably seem less convincing. And I think mid-table will be okay for them, but if they're wanting to push near the top half, I think they'll be disappointed. Or in the top 6 anyway. Completing the bottom half, number 13 is Bristol City. Now, again, like I said, the mid-table pack could literally, anyone could be anywhere. But Sinclair Armstrong has obviously signed. Max Bird has returned from Derby. There's obviously talks ongoing about Tommy Conway, who's fallen out with Liam Manning, about whether he will leave. Burnley apparently might be interested in him, and that could mean Scott Twine goes back to Ashton Gate. Now, if Scott Twine gets back there, then I think that's a good sign for Bristol City. So I think it'll be another season of steady progression with Liam Manning. But, I mean, eventually at some point they will want to kick on towards the playoffs, I imagine. But at the same time, I think 13th wouldn't be a too bad a position for Bristol City. So now we get into the top half of the Championship. So 12th place, we've got Marty Cifuentes, QPR. Now, obviously, look, I'm not going to pretend to know anything about the signings that they've brought in. It's mainly been unknowns that have been signed. Annie Harris made a video about this, Bristol City fan, and I'm on the Championship panel with as well. He's a good lad. I'd highly recommend you check it out and subscribe to him. He basically said it's unknowns coming in, but the main bit I'm confident of is Cifuentes. I think Cifuentes coming in did a really good job at QPR. Not quite as good as another manager who came in later on in the season and kept the team up, but he still did a solid job. The bits I'm concerned about are Chris Willock's gone to Cardiff. I know QPR fans apparently weren't as bothered about that. And Elias Chair's apparently, I don't know whether there's legal issues still going on with him. If they're resolved and he's able to play, then that's a big boost for QPR. If not, could be a concern. But at the minute, I'd back QPR. Marty Cifuentes QPR to break the top 12. 11th, I've gone for Cardiff. Now, originally, I didn't know about some of the business they've signed. Now, first of all, Errol Bullitt has stayed, which I think is a good shout for them. But at the same time, the three signings they've made that I've recognised: Chris Willock, as I mentioned before, from QPR. El Ghazi, I believe it's the former Aston Villa player El Ghazi, who's done well in this division before. And Callum Chambers. Now, they're three, if they can keep them fit, they are very, very, or should be very, very good signings. I don't think they'll push near towards the playoffs or anything, but I think Bullitt staying, I think, is a massive coup for them to get him to stay amidst all the uncertainty while Vincent Tan's still there. But Errol Bullitt did a solid job last year, and I think he'll continue that trajectory this season. Number 10, so we've got into the top 10 at this point. Sheffield Wednesday. Now, this is probably the one that I think a lot of people, I would have said Sheff Wed's a dark horse, but the way everybody's following the same along the same lines as what I think, maybe less so. The biggest reason is Danny Röhl. Now, apparently I could be wrong here, but since Danny Röhl came to Sheffield Wednesday last October, I think it was, they've been top 8 form-wise in the Championship ever since he's been there. Ike Ugbo returned permanently the other day. Jamal Lowe has signed on a free transfer. Charlie McNeil from Manchester United has signed on a free transfer. Jan Valery, former Southampton fullback, is there as well. There's really good signs with them for Sheffield Wednesday. And again, I think Danny Röhl is the biggest reason for that. I think Danny Röhl is, like I said, he was my main shout for the Sunderland job in the summer. But obviously that was never going to happen. And I think with Danny Röhl, if he's there the whole season, Sheffield Wednesday will be nowhere near the bottom 3, I don't think. I think they'll be much closer to the playoffs than I don't think they will be near the playoffs, but they'll be closer to the playoffs in position-wise than the bottom 3. Big fan of Danny Röhl. Right, 9th, I've got Sunderland. I've seen quite a few people. Now, we're probably one of the most unpredictable teams to predict this season, because I've seen people gone, Benjamin Bloom put us 15th, which is his opinion, but I personally disagree with it. I think we're better than that. I've seen not top 20. Second tier pod put us in 6th. Gabriel Sutton, I'd love to know what you're drinking, mate, because you got us to win the league. Now, if we get a good now, I'll get this short and sweet, because everyone knows my thoughts on Sunderland. If we get a good goal scorer up top, and particularly if we either adequately replace or keep Jack Clark, for me, there is absolutely no excuse not to be finishing in the top 6 with what we've got. And I think we have got a much better squad than some of our fans actually act like we have. I think that right now, I think we're 9th or 10th material, but I do think if we can keep Clark or replace him adequately and get a good goal scorer up top, and also who's the focal point and makes the rest of the team, like our wingers, better, then I think we finish in the top 6. But as of right now, I've got us to finish 9th. 8th, I have gone... Oh, by the way, Reggio Libris, unknown quantity at the moment. We'll wait and see. It could go really bad, could go really well. So we'll wait and see what happens with that one. Right, 8th, I've gone for Norwich. Now, originally I had Norwich in the top 6 until probably last week, when they've lost Gabriel Sara to Galatasaray, and Leeds apparently are in talks to sign Johnny Rowe. Although the fee is £7 million, I'd be astonished if Norwich even contemplates selling at that fee. So, if Johnny Rowe, with the last year of his contract, although I do believe Norwich have the extension of another year, if he ends up going, then obviously that's a different question altogether. They've still got Borja Sainz, Angus Gunn, Josh Sargent, to name a few of them. Shane Duffy's still there. So there is Kenny McLean still there. So there is still quite a few amount of quality. But there's no getting away from the fact that Gabriel Sara, for me, was one of the best centre mids in the Championship last year. To lose him is a big blow. But at the same time, we'll wait and see how he's replaced, if anything. They should have a bit more money to spend. But if they lose Johnny Rowe on top of that, then there could be a bit of a concern there. And obviously, Thorup, and obviously Ben Thomas Thorup. No, is it Thomas Thorup? I think I might have got his first name wrong there. But if Thorup can do really well with that group, they should be competing near the playoffs. If not, if they struggle to replace Sara and Rowe, then mid-table awaits possibly. At least that's what my mate Chris Reeves says on Talk Norwich City, so we'll wait and see. 7th, I've gone for Middlesbrough. Now, Middlesbrough, I think, ended the season really, really well. But as Not the Top 20 podcast pointed out, could that be down to the fact that the pressure was off and they didn't have anything to play for at that stage? I don't know. Michael Carrick obviously has done really, really well, and he recovered well from losing the likes of Akpom, Giles, Archer. There's a few other players I've completely forgotten. Those have completely exited my head. But yeah, there's a few. Stefan, there's another one. They lost quite a number of players a year ago, and they've recovered well from them since. Latte, obviously, if they keep him fit, he knows where the goal is. I wouldn't be surprised if they finished in the top 6, and they've obviously signed, I think. They're signing a youngster from Manchester City, which I can't remember his name, who it is. But if you're from Man City, you've got to have something about you, haven't you? So we'll wait and see with that one. But with Middlesbrough, I've got them just finishing outside the playoffs, but I wouldn't be shocked if they finished in them. And very quickly, backwards towards Norwich, I forgot to mention Callum Doyle, who they've signed recently. Very, very good signing for them. Right, into the big time, the top 6. So here we go. 6th, I've gone for West Brom. Now, West Brom have had to let a few players go. The biggest one being Thomas Asante, who I believe was in the last year of his contract. He has gone to Coventry. And they've signed Devante Cole to replace him, which is a bit of an interesting choice, but there you have it. Carlos Corbrand's the biggest reason I've got West Brom in there. He did well last season to get them into the top 6, and they competed well against Southampton over the 2 playoff games. But what I would say is, they have to balance books apparently because of the FFP or PSR sustainability rules. And if they're having to do that and balance the books in that regard, then that's not looking particularly great for them. But if Carlos Corbrand's still there, then I'd back him to get the best tune out of a lot of what he's got and to just scrape 6th. So it's one drop off from last year from 5th to 6th. But I think if you offered West Brom fans playoffs again, they probably would take it. Right, 5th. Now, whereas I had Norwich in this position a couple of weeks back, I didn't have this team in there, but it was Sheffield United. But the more I started to look at the business that they've done, yes, Chris Wilder's there, who I'm still not entirely convinced by, and they've lost Jim. Is it Jaden Bogle? Hang on, Jaden Bogle? I think it is. I've forgotten his first name already. See, I'm terrible with names. Bogle sold to Leeds for £5 million, I believe it was. But they've signed Callum O'Hare, Kiefer Moore, Harrison Burrows, and they've already got Gustavo Hamer there. They obviously lost Cameron Archer because I think he went back to Villa at the end of last season. I think that I'm not convinced with them off the pitch at the minute. I think off the pitch there apparently are still quite a few issues at Sheffield United. But at the same time, though, you've got to remember that I think the rest of the league is so much weaker, I think, that Sheffield United, even with their issues, should have a good shout at finishing in the top 6. As of right now, I've got them 5th, but but I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't finish in the playoffs. 4th, I've gone for Coventry City. Now, look, Callum O'Hare is a big blow. He's gone to Sheffield United, and that's a big blow for them. I think apparently he hoped for a Premier League move, but obviously that hasn't materialised, has it? But Callum O'Hare, I think, is a loss for them. But what I would say is they've got Sakamoto there. They've got and then obviously got they've got Thomas Asante signing. And speaking of forwards, they've got Haji Wright and Ellis Sims up top. 2 very, very good forwards for this level, I think. They've got a really good spine, a really good base, and most importantly, they've got a settled side now. And one of the reasons they started last season so poorly was because they had to get all of these players integrated and gelled together. And they've got Mark Robbins, who I think is a really, really superb manager. And I think he will get them progressing even further, and I think he will get them into the playoffs. And pretty convincingly, to be fair, as well. So I really like the look of Coventry's squad, and I would tip them to finish 4th at the moment. Third, I've gone for Luton Town. Now, obviously, from what I could see, aside from Ross Barkley, they've managed to keep a majority of their squad. Rob Edwards signed a new deal in the summer, I believe, and that's a really, really good selling point for them. They haven't signed many players. I believe one of them, Shandon Baptiste, I think from Brentford, but I might be wrong. But in some ways, I actually think that might be a good thing for Luton because it means that they've got a really settled side, and it didn't seem like they needed to add as much. They've got a really competent side in the. They signed a side a year ago in the Prem that, for me, was signed in case they got relegated, and which they obviously did do. And they've got a side that could challenge for promotion. Chong's still there as well amongst it, but I think Luton will be a very, very solid team, and I wouldn't be surprised to finish in the top 2. But at the moment, I would back them to just miss out on the top 2, but comfortably be in the playoffs. Right, the top 2. Top 2, this is where it's going to get interesting. Second place is Burnley. Now, obviously, look, Burnley have got a lot of players, and although they haven't got the likes of, Nathan Teller's not there anymore, Harwood Bellis isn't there anymore, but they've still got a lot of players there that were crucial. I believe they've still got a lot of players there that were massive in terms of helping them get promoted to the Premier League a couple of years ago. I believe Murrich in goal has left Burnley to go to Ipswich, but they've still got James Trafford. Now, James Trafford didn't have a great season by all accounts last year, from what I've heard, but I think playing in the Championship where the quality isn't as good, I think might actually do them the world of good. And they've obviously got Scott Parker, someone who, well, I'm not as convinced by him as a manager, I must admit, but probably because he isn't a fancy name, but I can't argue with it. He's got 2 promotions from this division. Got Fulham promoted in 2020 via the playoffs, and then in 2022, he got Bournemouth promoted in automatic promotion, 2nd place. So I think Burnley will be much less fancy, much less aesthetically pleasing on the eye as what they were 2 years ago under Company. But I do think that Parker is solid enough and streetwise enough to know the job in this division and to get it done. So I think he will do well to get them into 2nd place. And top champions, Leeds United. Yes, Asensio, Somerville and Archie Gray have gone. But they've still... Bogle, as I said earlier, has replaced Gray for £5 million. They've still got, at the time of recording, Daniel James, got Janonto, they've got Ruta, then Rodon's come back, Ampadu's still there, Peru's still there. Kamara obviously left as well. Joe Rothwell, who was on loan at Southampton second half of last season, has joined on loan from Bournemouth. While I do believe that that they're weaker than what they were last year, they've still got a lot of top quality signings for this division. And as I said earlier, I think the league is much weaker. And I think Leeds... And Daniel Farker has got 2 promotions from this league. I do think the pressure's really on Daniel Farker and Leeds, apparently, because a Leeds fan that I speak to says that they need to go up this year, because obviously I think it's only 2 years of parachute payments now. But I do believe Leeds will win the league and go up, or at least finish top 2, and they need to, really, with the quality that they have. Because the 3 sides coming down are nowhere near as good as the 3 sides coming down last year, in my opinion. And Coventry aside, I think the rest of the league isn't up to much at the moment, although I do think Sunderland should be if we get a good forward, as I said, or keep Clark or adequately replace him. But Leeds, I think, will do it. I think that Ellen Road will be a fortress, and I think that they will end up winning the league and getting bounced back at the second time of asking back to the Premier League. So there you have it. So I'll quickly recap the league. Going down, I've got Oxford, Plymouth and Derby. Then from 21st upwards, I've got 21st Portsmouth, 20th Blackburn, 19th Hull, 18th Watford, 17th Preston, 16th Swansea, 15th Stoke, 14th Millwall, 13th Bristol City, then we get into the top half, 12th QPR, 11th Cardiff, 10th Sheffield, 9th currently Sunderland, but that changes with the good forward, 8th Norwich, 7th Borough, then the playoffs are West Brom 6th, Sheffield United 5th, Coventry 4th, Luton 3rd, then the top 2, Burnley in 2nd, and Leeds champions. And that's my championship predictions for the 2024-25 season. Let me know in the comments below what you think, and if you're not a regular subscriber, you're watching the video and you're not subscribed, hit the like button and subscribe. It would mean a lot if you think I've earned it from you. And where do you think your team's going to be? What do you think is a neutral? Let me know in the comments below, guys. And thank you very much to everyone who's shown support for me this year. It's been really appreciated. And yeah, I'll see you tomorrow for the reaction to the Cardiff game. Hopefully it's a good start for Reggie Labrisse's men. But take care, guys. You lovely lot. And as always, stay safe. Are with the lads.